Greetings everyone, and welcome to the last lesson of the topic VPC. Today we are going to be putting a cap on the topic VPC, where we are going to be looking at what is a gateway endpoint. We are going to be looking at endpoint, and then we are going to be looking at flow logs, and we are going to finish with antenna. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to explain to you what a gateway endpoint is, and then I'll tell you situations which you can be capable of using that gateway endpoint. Then we are going to look at the VPC flow logs. Most often when you hear of logs, you think of monitoring. Exactly, that's what is going to be happening there. And antenna is also somehow linked to these logs in the way we are going to study it. We are going to see how all of these match up together. All right, so let's start by explaining to you what an endpoint a gateway endpoint is all about. All right, let us go to our demonstration board. What should this be? Okay, imagine a situation where you have this. This is an infrastructure. Okay, this one here is a public subnet. There is an EC2 instance that is a web server here. It is a public subnet. Now there is another database server that is found in a private subnet. Okay, now but due to some reasons, your employer tells you that this particular database that is here like this, he does not want internet access in this database, but the database needs to communicate with other resources like S3 here. Okay, this database is hosting information that is so sensitive that he is afraid that if internet access is sent to this database, the information might be compromised. So he tells you that irrespective of what you explain to him about NAT gateway, irrespective of what you explain to him about private subnet, irrespective of every security details you tell him, he tells you that no, he does not want internet access to be constantly flowing to this database. But the database needs to access AWS resources. In this type of a situation, what network mechanism can you link that database to an S3 bucket, for example, or a platform as a service like MySQL or other things, right? You need to link them together so that they should communicate in a very secure environment. So for that, AWS has given us what we call a VPC endpoint, an endpoint gateway. Okay, using an endpoint gateway, you can link a server in a private subnet without an internet access to an AWS resource. There are two types of gateways. We have gateway endpoint and interface endpoint. Okay, for gateway endpoint, the gateway endpoint only link to S3 bucket and DynamoDB database, right? The rest of the resources are linked by interface endpoint. Okay, so you remember that you have gateway endpoint and interface endpoint. These are the two of them: interface endpoint and gateway endpoint. So the interface endpoint is an elastic network interface with a private IP address which will act as an entry point for the traffic destined to a particular service. Okay, So these are the various advantages of interface endpoint. It supports most AWS services such as Amazon CloudWatch, Amazon SNS, in fact all other AWS services. Okay, each interface endpoint can support a bandwidth of almost 10 gigabytes per second. You have to read all these. And then we have gateway endpoint. For gateway endpoint, it only supports S3 and DynamoDB. Okay, just those two services. Endpoint, gateway endpoint link those your private servers to Amazon S3 and DynamoDB, while interface endpoint link to all the other resources. Okay, so that is just the idea behind a gateway endpoint. What is a question that can arise? A question can arise in an interview session. I have a server. The server is located in a VPC. It is located inside a private subnet. I need that server to communicate with another AWS resource. The resource is an S3 bucket. I don't want to pass through the internet. What solution can you, as a system administrator, give to me? Your answer would be, I am going to use, since the server is located inside a VPC, a private subnet, and it needs to communicate with an S3 bucket, and I know that S3 buckets can be connected by a VPC gateway endpoint. I am going to create a VPC gateway endpoint, and then I link the server with the S3 bucket. So the idea is connecting servers to resources without the use of the internet. Okay, so in order to do all this, in order to demonstrate all this, we are going to create all this infrastructure. When we create all this infrastructure, we are going to some sort of create this S3. Try when we did CLI, when we did AWS CLI, from an instance, from an EC2 instance, we are capable of creating an S3 bucket, right? From an EC2 instance, we are capable of creating an S3 bucket using AWS CLI. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to create all this infrastructure and end here. Okay, we are going to create all this infrastructure and end here, and then we are going to try to create an S3 bucket without the use of an endpoint. If the S3 bucket is not created, then we are unable to create because we don't have internet access. But if after we create an endpoint gateway, and then from this EC2 instance we are capable of creating an S3 bucket from inside here, then we can safely conclude that we created an S3 bucket from this EC2 instance through the use of an endpoint gateway. So the endpoint gateway is what permits us to connect to our S3 bucket. Okay, so let's go and create all this infrastructure. So I will be relatively as fast as I can. Start by creating my VPC. I'll name it Gateway VPC. And then I'll give it a CIDR. And then I'll come down and create my VPC. Next is I'll create my subnet, public subnet. Create it inside my gateway VPC. Name it public subnet gateway. and then I create it in US2A. I give the CIDR block, I create my public subnet. I actually make it public, and I save. Next is I create my private subnet. And then I put it in 2B, just a preference for that. Then I give the CIDR, I create the subnet. Good. Next, this one remains private. Next, I create my internet gateway. Call it gateway, internet gateway. Create my internet gateway. I link my internet gateway to my VPC. Next, I create my route table. Call it gateway route table. Put it in my VPC, and then I create my route table. I associate it to my public subnet, and then I route traffic to the internet. And then I save. Now the next thing is all my infrastructure is created. So let me create VPC EC2 instances. I create the first instance, which is going to be some sort of a Bastion server. And I call it Bastion Gateway. Let me just first of all put it Gateway server. Now I'll create two of them because we are going to use one in Athena. Not now. Let me just create Bastion server, Bastion Gateway. And then it will be an Ubuntu machine for the Bastion. Everything looks good. Key pair. I'll put it in the right VPC. It needs to be in a public subnet. Good. Then I'll create its security group, which I'll call Gateway Security Group. description will be the same thing. And then since it is just a Bastion server, I don't need to open any HTTP port. It's just a simple Bastion server. I create the server. Next is I create another server inside the private subnet. Now there is a difference in the image that I'm going to use for this server. I'm not going to use the Ubuntu image. I'm going to use the Linux image. The reason why I'm using the Linux image is that the Linux image comes with all packages already created, already installed in it. I don't need to update the Linux image in order to do what I have to do. But if I use the Ubuntu image, I'll need to update it, and in order to update it, I need the internet. You get it? Let me show you something that I want to show you. DB gateway. Now here, these are images that I need to use. All of the time we have been using Ubuntu image, right? Most of the time we have always been using the Ubuntu image. Now, but I'm saying that I'm going to use the Amazon Linux AWS image. Okay, the reason is that if I use Ubuntu image, I need to update packages before I can get something like I need to install AWS CLI in the Ubuntu before I can communicate with Ubuntu from the command line to my account. Okay, but if I don't want to install anything, I just want to create my database and don't send internet to my database, I should use an image that is already updated, that is already having AWS CLI installed in it. Okay, because if I use Ubuntu, AWS CLI is not installed in Ubuntu by default. I'll have to install AWS CLI. So, and you know what CLI is? It is that command line interface application that AWS gives, that gives you the permission to interact with the AWS console from your command line, with the AWS from your command line, actually, not with the AWS console. Okay, so with the Amazon, it is the AWS image that they have given. So their own image is already updated to the level that it contains the AWS CLI. So that is the image that I am going to use. So I choose Amazon Linux for the database, because that is the database that does not need internet. We do not need internet access in this database. For the server, we could use Ubuntu, but for the database, since our client says it does not need internet access, we go with AWS Linux image. We can use the same T2 micro and use the same key pair, and then we put it inside our VPC and put it inside our private subnet, and then we create a security group for it. We call it DB gateway security group. Our description will be the same thing. And then SSH is okay. We can just allow it for the sake of demonstration, and we launch our DB in our private server. Okay, now what have we done? We have created all this infrastructure like that. We have created internet gateway, route table, first security group. This VPC is created. This EC2 instance is created in this subnet. Now we want to link the public subnet with the private subnet. This is the link that we want to do. Okay, link the public subnet with the private subnet. This one is created. This EC2 instance is created. So let us link the public subnet with the private subnet. How do we do that? How do you link the public subnet with the private subnet? We have done it most of the time or all of the times. Let us see how it is done. We copy our key pair. We are going to copy the key pair that we have of this machine and put inside this machine, and then from this machine we are going to access this machine. That is how we link it. Okay, copy the key pair of this computer and put inside this computer, and then from this one we link. That is what we are going to do. So let's go create the key pair. Let's first of all have access to our instance. Here is our instance. Our public instance is, this is the Bastion. Connect to it from our client. And then what we do is we create the key pair. The key pair's name is the same key pair that I've been using. Create the file, and then we open the key pair. I've opened the key pair somewhere here. I've messed up. Okay, this I just need to copy, Control C. I've not copied everything. Now I've copied everything. Now I have to paste here. Now what I do, I change the Air France as I change it to 400. Good, it is changed. Now from here I can now have my key pair. There is my key pair now there that contains everything. I can now move into the other server. How do I move into the other server? I go back and get the connection of the server itself. It should be the gateway server. Connect. Go to SSH. This is what I'm looking for. Now I am connected. Look at the way the Amazon Linux machine shows up. You see that it is different from Ubuntu. So right here I am in the Amazon Linux machine. Okay, the machine is not having any internet access. That is why we cannot do anything. With Amazon, with Ubuntu, we used to run apt, then we put update, right? But the difference is that with Linux, Amazon Linux, we are going to run yum update. Okay, and here we cannot update. The reason is that we do not have internet access inside here. Okay, but if you have an Ubuntu machine, you are going to use apt. Okay, now another thing is here. Now we will have to run AWS configure. The reason we are running AWS configure is because we want to use AWS command line, and when we run AWS configure, what does AWS configure do? AWS configure is going to link the machine that you are using. It is going to give you the possibility of putting your credentials so that you can link the machine that you are using to the AWS interface, so that you can get connected to the AWS interface. Okay, that is why you run AWS configure. Okay, so let us understand very well. We are running AWS configure here because we want to link this EC2, this database instance that we created in a very private server. We want to link it to our AWS interface because it is in a private environment. No matter that it is inside AWS, it is in a private environment. You cannot have access to any AWS service because it doesn't have internet. So for us to link it, we have to put AWS configure, and then we'll put our access key, and then we'll put our secret access key. Okay, put our access key and secret access key, and when we put our access key and secret access key, we are going to link. But now, if we used the Ubuntu system, when we run AWS configure, you will get an error to see that AWS CLI is not installed in that Ubuntu system. But in this AWS system, AWS CLI is already installed. You can try it. When you can go to your private DB, you use Ubuntu system, and then you run AWS configure. You will not see, it will show you that it is an error because it does not recognize AWS configure. The reason is AWS CLI is not installed there. Please take this. If you don't do this, you are going to have errors. Okay, so let me go get my secret access key. Before we go, let me execute. So it is asking me now AWS access key ID. Okay, so let me go get my access key ID. You already know how to generate your access key and your secret access key. So after practice, I'm going to delete this one. That's my access key. Enter. Secret access key. I hope you already know where to generate your access key and your secret access key. If you don't know, you have to go back to your lessons. And then the default region name. Where do I take my default region name? I have to take my default region name from here. I am at Oregon, which is US West 2. So I get it. And then here I can just put text, and I have linked it. Okay, that means now that I have linked my AWS interface with my database machine. Okay, so under normal circumstances, now this is the moment of truth. Under normal circumstances, there is a command that if I run that command, an S3 bucket is going to be created. What is that command? Let's go get the command. There is a command that if I run that command, an S3 bucket is going to be created. What is that command? Here is the command. This is the command. If I run this command and give a bucket name, an S3 bucket is created. Here is a command. Copy the command. Okay, let us paste the command and give a name to our bucket. Let's say our bucket is gateway bucket 237. That's the name of our bucket. So the command is AWS S3 make bucket S3 / gateway bucket 237. What are we expecting? Our expectation is that this bucket should not be created. And why should the bucket not be created? The bucket should not be created because we are in a private subnet and our machine is not supposed to interact with anything from outside this private subnet. If we run this command and this bucket gets created, then we are wrong, because anybody can have access to our machine. Then we are not private. What they are talking about privacy is not private. But if we run this command and the bucket does not get created, then we know that, okay, we are secured, we are inside a secure environment. Let's run the command. So we are waiting for the command to get executed. So something is wrong somewhere. The command is not being executed. That means our server is not connecting to our AWS interface. Meanwhile, we have given all the various connections, yet it is not connecting to our AWS interface. What is the reason? The reason is because our server does not have internet access, and there is no way our server can connect to AWS interface. Now, what do we need to do? We need to provide a link through which our server can connect to the AWS interface, and that link is what we now call the gateway, AWS gateway, okay, the VPC gateway. So let's go create our VPC gateway. In order to create your VPC gateway, you come to the VPC console. You look for endpoints. Look for endpoints. Take endpoints. Then you come create endpoints. Then you say gateway. Give your name that you like, please. Gateway practice endpoint. That's the name of my endpoint. I take all AWS services. Then what do I want to link with? I want to link with S3, so I type S3. I have a bundle of S3s. So which one am I choosing? Now we are linking gateway. When you type S3, you see this is interface, type interface. That's not the one that we need. So we are looking for gateway endpoint S3. Then we look for the type that is gateway, not the type that is interface. Okay, so let us do a filter by type S3 bucket. So from here we have service name. We can get the service S3 global access point. Let's see, this one is interface. No, that's not the one that we are looking for. We are looking for aws.s3. Let me see if we have that. aws.h3.global access point. Is this what we are looking for? This one is type interface. No, we are looking for gateway. Let me see. Good. This is okay. This is it. com.uswest2.s2. So look at the type. It is gateway. Gateway. Now we have this is S3 Express, but this is S3 Global. We are taking this one because it is type gateway. You remember we said we have two types. We have the interface and then we have the gateway. So we are linking to S3, so S3 uses the gateway, so we are taking this one. That is the one we select, and then we select our VPC, and then now here there is something we are going to do here. While creating our gateway, we are going to route the traffic directly. Route table, right? Route table. That means we are choosing our route table here. This gateway route table, we have already used this gateway route table for our public subnet, so we don't need to be creating another route table. So let's use the original route table that when you create a VPC, it comes with a route table. Okay, so let's just use this route table. So here we are already routing the traffic directly. It is not like in the other situations when we create a route table, we will first of all go associate the route table to a particular subnet, and then after we associate the route table to a particular subnet, we will then route the traffic to the endpoint. Can I show you what I am actually talking about? Because it might give you some confusions when you are working. Look at something here. When you create a route table, right? When you create a route table like let's just take this route table is created here. You go first thing first, you click on the route table, and then you edit subnet association, and then you choose the subnet that you want to route to. After you have done that, what next? The next thing that you are going to do is you are going to come back again to that route table, you edit this one, and then you edit routes. When you click on edit route, it is here now that you are going to add a route, and then you are going to choose where you are routing to. In under normal circumstances, we are supposed to route to what? We are creating an endpoint gateway, but there is no endpoint gateway here. There is no endpoint gateway. We see gateway load balancer, we see NAT gateway. There is no endpoint gateway here. So you will not route the traffic here. You will only associate the route table and not route traffic. Okay, so here while creating our endpoint, we are already routing the traffic, because when I click on this route table, I am already routing the traffic. Okay, I'm already routing the traffic directly, right? So I can click on this route table, and then I associate it to a particular subnet. Okay, now you can also create a new route table. There's a possibility of you creating a new route table. When you reach here and you discover that this route table is already used, you don't want to use the default route table, no problem. You can come here, come to route tables, and then you create your route table, and then you call it what? Second gateway route table. Now you link it to your VPC, you create it. Now what do you need to do? You need to attach it. You need to give it to a particular subnet. Which particular subnet? Private subnet. Okay, you need to give it to a private subnet to associate. Okay, Now here you are not going to route the traffic here. Where are we routing the traffic? We are already routing the traffic here like this. So if we refresh here, if we refresh, we are certainly going to see your gateway created. Let's do a refresh. Since it is not refreshing, let's refresh the whole page. Create endpoints. Gateway practice endpoint. Good. We come down here, we are looking for S3 and to refresh, so that I put S3 and I put S3 and search. I have this one here, which is the gateway type. Then I come down, I select VPC, gateway VPC. I come down. Now my second gateway route table is created. I choose the second gateway route table, come down, I take my full access policy, come down, and I create my endpoint gateway. Okay, my gateway endpoint is now created, right? Which means that what? Which means that I have now linked my AWS interface with my server, which means now that I can run my my CLI in my server and an S3 bucket is created. Let's go try it. Which means now that we can run our instance here, our command here, and our bucket is created without any problem. Our bucket was hanging in the air. It seems as if when we finish creating our gate point, it executed. Let us check. Let us go to S3 buckets. Let us, so you see our bucket got created the moment our S3 our endpoint was created. Our bucket got created. Okay, so right now you can be capable of launching. Let us create another bucket for you to see. You can be capable of launching commands here, and you get buckets created in your S3. So let's create another bucket here and give the name not 237 but 419. That means it's a fake bucket. For those who know the Nigerian code. So see, the moment we execute, the bucket gets created immediately. It did not take a lot of time. So which means we are now interacting with our AWS interface without any problem. So if I refresh here, we are going to see our bucket that we just created, which is the 419 bucket. Here the bucket it is. Okay, so we are successfully created an endpoint. Okay, we have successfully established an endpoint. Now we are very secure in this subnet, this private subnet, we are secure there, and at the same time we are securely accessing a bucket in AWS. We can create a bucket in AWS, we can enter into that bucket, we can do things, we can manipulate the bucket, we can do several things with that bucket. Okay, so we have created a clean and secure connection which does not depend on the internet. Okay, so that's our topic on endpoint. If you have any issues on our talk show, you can bring it up so that we clarify everything. Okay, so we go to our next topic, which is as our next topic, VPC flow logs. So we already have the infrastructure, so we are not going to create any infrastructure. The only thing we are going to create is a server, which we are going to, inside that server, access the server, and then from that server we are going to create logs that we are going to use Athena in order to visualize the logs. Okay, so what are VPC flow logs? First of all, what are VPC flow logs? Flow logs are logs that here is your VPC like this. Anything that tries to interact with your VPC, there is a log that is generated. Okay, if there is a call request that is made to your VPC, whether it is accepted, whether it is rejected, a log is generated. So the issue is, if you are able to be visualizing those logs, you will see who made a call to your VPC, and was that call accepted, was that call rejected. So from there now you can start to scan the various tools or applications or resources that are making calls on your VPC, because you have to monitor all that. You cannot sit without monitoring what is making calls to my VPC, what is trying to attack my VPC, what is entering into my VPC. All those things are generated in logs. Okay, that is what we call VPC flow logs. So we are going to create VPC flow logs here, and then we are going to create a server inside this public subnet. We access that server, and then we are going to see if the logs have been generated. Those logs are going to be generated, and we are going to store the logs in an S3 bucket. Not this particular S3 bucket, we are going to create a new S3 bucket, and we are going to store the logs in that S3 bucket. Okay, so that is what we are going to do with flow logs. So let's go create a server first of all. Then from after creating that server, we create flow logs, and then we see how to create an S3 to put the logs inside the S3, and then we visualize the logs. Let's go create a server. Now we want to create a server. We can still use AWS image to create a server. We have been using Ubuntu for a very quite long period of time, so let us have some pleasure of just flexing with servers. Flow log server. We remain with Amazon Linux, and then we go with T2 Micro is okay, Keeper, Air France Keeper. We go subnet, we put it in the gateway subnet, and then public subnet. Yeah, we are going to create, because the first subnet security group did not have HTTP, so we are going to create our web server security group. Here we are going to open HTTP. So we are going to add, and then we if type HTTP, and then we go right down. We directly add a bootstrap so that our server gets created. We don't have time to go installing servers, please. Let us just add a bootstrap. Here is a bootstrap that I prepared for you. All of you have this bootstrap. So what we are going to see is welcome to what? To the first trial of creating a web page in VTA, whatever. That's what you're going to see. So launch instance. What's there? Oh, source from anywhere. Cool. Launch instance. Good. Now our instance is launched. Let's go create flow logs. In order for you to create flow logs, you click on the VPC itself. Where is our VPC? Our VPC is this VPC. Click on the VPC itself, and then you come down to flow logs. Okay, now in flow logs you can create a flow log. Give the name server flow logs. You can just decide to be trapping accept logs or reject logs, but here I'm tracking all the logs. So because it is us, let's just put 1 minute so that the logs can get created very fast. So we are going to send the log in an S3 bucket, but there is something we have not yet created, that S3 bucket. Let's create an S3 bucket. Create a bucket. We put it flowing logs bucket. I'm not sure somebody could have gotten that type of a name. We take ACL enabled, and then let us just make it public. We know all these things. I mean, create a bucket. I think everything is okay. We create that bucket. Now after we create the bucket, we need an ARN of the bucket. And this is the flowing logs bucket. We need an ARN of the bucket. We copy the ARN, and then we'll come back to our creation. You see, send to an Amazon S3 bucket, and then they're asking you the bucket ARN. So we paste the bucket ARN here, and we just take the record format by default. Don't want any complications here. Text, yeah, everything looks okay. Let's put the every 1 hour. Partition logs by 1 hour, but honestly in the company you would like to put 24 hours. Okay, I create flow logs. My flow logs are created. What is the meaning of that? It means now that if I launch a request to see my website, that request is recorded somewhere. Okay, so right now I'm going to try to access my website. So my website is created where? In this particular server, like this flow log server. So this is the IP address of my website. So let me try accessing my website. So as I'm trying to access my website, this is the website accessible. As I'm trying to access my website, what is going to happen? This particular access that I have done on my website is going to be recorded. Let me open a different browser and try to access it from there. so that there will be multiple calls made to the website. So as many calls are being made to the website, so many records will be made. So I can access my website. Okay, so yeah, we are able to access our website. Now let's go to our bucket. Here is our S3 bucket. We had flowing logs. We have not created anything inside this bucket, but if we open the bucket, we are going to see a folder created here. We did not create this folder. Okay, we just made sure that logs should be sent to this bucket, and this folder is created automatically. Now when we create this folder, we see another folder here. We open the folder. Logs are not yet coming in. Remember that we put a particular period of time for logs to start coming in. So we'll have to be patient for these logs to start coming in. Okay, we'll have to be patient. But while we are getting patient for logs to start coming in, what I want us to do is let us start explaining to you what Artena is and how we are going to use Artena while we wait for the logs to start being generated. Oh, the logs are already being generated. Fortunately, the logs are already there. Yeah, the logs are already there. Okay, it was faster than I thought. So here are the logs. The logs are already there. Okay. Now in order to see these logs, you can download them. Okay, so let us some sort of click on the logs and download. And download, open folder. Here are the logs. I can open the logs. Now here is the log. You see there was a call made to the logs. Nothing much has been done. Version, account interface, blah 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 blah. So I made a call early enough, and the call was not yet registered. So let us keep holding on and wait and wait. Let's delete this one. And wait for more logs to get downloaded. Open the logs. Let's download the second one. Yeah, this one is 162 byte. This one is 974. This one should be heavier. Let's download this one. Start downloading. Open folder. Open the logs. Okay, this is the way the logs present themselves. So look at the logs. We have the account version, right? We have the ID, interface ID, what is making the call to those to the VPC. We have the IP address that is making that call to your VPC, right? You will see the IP address, it is there, and then you have the status. This one was rejected, this one was rejected, this one was rejected. That means so many calls came to my VPC before I actually even made a call, because the accepted call is the one that I had to make. Okay, if you look at that call, it is pinging directly towards my IP address. Here is my IP address. Okay, it's pinging directly towards my IP address. So here you can be able to see what is making calls to your VPC. Now, but imagine, now we are already entering Athena now. Imagine that your boss, these are just I think this is just about 100 lines. Yes, this is just about 100 lines or so, if I'm not mistaken. Imagine that for a day, we have just done this in a space of 10 minutes, 3 minutes, I think. Imagine that for a day, you are supposed to be filtering throughout all these logs. Okay, you are filtering throughout all these logs, and your boss comes and tell you that I want a list of all the logs that were accepted within 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. There are almost close to 200,000 logs. Will you go looking for it with your eyes like this? Will you go looking for it with your eyes like this? You are going to get mad, because this folder is going to be as long as anything. Okay, the folder is going to be as long as anything. So in order to actually be capable of sorting our logs, getting information from our logs, we have to use a resource. What is that resource? That is where Athena comes into play. That is where Athena comes into play. Now, you know the meaning of query. When they say you are querying something, it means you are asking for patterns from that thing. Now, I can decide to say I want logs that were rejected from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. I want all the logs that were accepted from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. I want just all accepted logs. I want just all rejected logs. That is what we call query. So if you say you are querying a database, that means you are trying to get information from that particular database. Okay, you are trying to get information from that database. Now, in order to query something, let's come back to our demonstration board, please. In order to query something, there is generally, you need to query something. If you need to query data, if and only if that data is in a database. You can only query data if that data is in a database. You cannot query data if that data is not in a database. It is not possible. It's difficult for you to query data if that data is not in a database. It's difficult, especially and use query language to query data when the data is not in a database. It's not possible or difficult, right? Querying data when the data is not in the database. This is a database, you can query the data. That's why we say it is always good to put your data inside a database so that you can query the data very easily. It's very easily to query the data. Now, our data is not in a database. Our data is inside an S3 bucket. Here is where our data is. Instead of being in a database, our data is located somewhere inside an S3 bucket. So question is, how are we going to query data that is located inside an S3 bucket and not in a database? We want to query because our logs are generated and kept in an S3 bucket and they are not kept in a database. And we are saying that in order to query data, that data should definitely be in a database for you to query that data. Now, our logs are located in an S3 bucket. Now, how shall we be able to query these logs in this S3 bucket? Here is where AWS gives us the solution of Athena. Athena now comes in and sits in between you and the S3 bucket. Athena sits here. Normally, Athena sits here and then provides you an interface. Athena then provides you an interface so that you can now query your data directly from the S3 bucket. You see the difference? Here we have a database. We have a database, and then we have our data inside our database, and then we can query. We can query our data, right? Here we don't have a database. We have S3 and we have data. Then we have Athena, and then we have Athena, and then we have our query editor here now. Athena is the one that gives us this query editor for us to query the data. I think you see the difference. So here you have your database, your data inside. From your database, you can directly query your data. But here, S3 is an object store. It is an object store. It is not a database. S3 is an object storage environment. It's not a database. But now, inside that object storage environment, we have objects that contains data. We have objects that contains data, and we need to query those objects directly in S3. Okay, that's where AWS gives us what we call Athena. And in order to use Athena, you should be able to know a bit about query. You should be able to know query language, just some small query. If you have done database, you will hear things like select star from this, select star from that, create this from that. That is what we call query language. Okay, instead of trying to say create me 5 rows, 3 columns, 6 rows, 4 columns. No, we do not do that. Okay, now because I was a very dull student, I will always, when I'm teaching, I always like to expatiate and explain more some of those things that I found very difficult for me to understand. When they are talking about database, and tables, what do they really mean by database and tables? Now, a database like this is just some sort of a file system that has been created for you. The file system has been created here. So for you to use this file system, you have to create what? A table. You have to first of all create a table. When you create a table, then you can be able to start fitting data inside that table. For example, we have a database which we use every day, but we don't know that we have that database. The database is called Excel. Okay, most of us, when we install Office, we have this. This is a database. Excel is a database. The difference between Excel and the other database is that Excel has a limitation. I think Excel has a limitation of about 1 million rows and something columns. I don't know exactly. Please find out. Excel has a limitation, but database has a very large. It can contain large rows and large columns. So for you to use this Excel like this, let's call it a database. For you to use a database, the first thing you have to do is, what do you want to do first of all? Well, I want to know how many teachers are teaching biology in my school, right? I want to know the number of teachers that are teaching biology in my school. And among those teachers, how many of them are women? How many of them are men? And among those teachers, how many of them are more than 30 years old and how many of them are less than 30 years old? This is information that you want to get. Okay? So how will the database administrator use this information in creating his database? First of all, let's get the information very clear. You need to know how many teachers are teaching biology in your school. That means there should be the first row, which goes to teachers. This column please. normally this is a row and then this is a column. Okay, so the first thing we are going to do is we are going to subject. There's a subject, right? Then a subject can be biology, chemistry, physics, whatsoever. Okay, we have a subject, then we have a teacher, and then we have, can this go like this? Where would the interference be? Teacher and the age. Let's see something, age and gender, and let's see whether it goes like this. So for subject we can have chemistry, have biology, can have physics and on the line. Then for teacher we can have Gabriel, we can have Ansel, we can have Jude, and then for age we can have 32, we can have 15, we can have 40. Then for gender we can have male, we can have female, we can have male. Okay, that means, will this move like this? No, there is something here that does not work. This table does not work. Why? The reason is because we are having, look at what we are having. It shows that chemistry is being taught by Gabriel, biology is being taught by Ansel, chemistry is being taught by Gabriel, and Gabriel's age is 32 and gender is male. Biology is being taught by Ansel, and Ansel's age is 15 and Ansel is a female. Physics is being taught by Jude, and Jude is 40 and Jude is a male. That's what it means, right? That means here we are trying to look at the various teachers that teaches particular subjects. Okay, various teachers that teaches particular subjects. Okay, now if we decide, so for here, can you have multiple teachers that are teaching the same subjects? You cannot. Here we can only have multiple. What can be increasing here? What should be increasing here? What should be increasing here is the data here, or the number of subjects can be increasing. Okay, but that is not what we want. We want that what should be increasing is the number of teachers and whether they are teaching biology or not. So in that case, we have to change this table. So this is the idea of a database. You just simply create a table and then you are trying to see how you can filter the table. Okay, you try to see how you can filter the table and make the table very, very presentable. So that's the idea of a database. Now with us here, with Athena, we are going to use Athena to create a table from this data, and then we are going to see how we can query that data. So let's go create Athena. Let's create Athena, Actually, we are not creating Athena. Athena is just there. We are just simply going to use it. And then you see the way we are going to use Athena, please. So you have to come and type search for Athena services. I already had Athena. Open it. And then here, when you open Athena, for me, I've been using Athena. Okay, when you will open Athena, you will see a please take care. For me, I saw just one prompt here. When you will open Athena, you will see two prompts. Take care. You will see two prompts. The first prompt will say that you should link Athena to your bucket. Then they will say that for you to first of all use Athena, you should link Athena to your bucket. Okay, you should link Athena to your bucket, and Athena is a regional service. So for me to demonstrate this, let me just go to a different region and try to show you something. Now, when you are in a different region and you come and you see Athena, now they'll tell you explore the query editor. Okay, when you click on explore query editor, look at what comes. Before you run your first query, you need to set up a query result location in Amazon S3. Okay, before you do anything, you need to set up this. And how do you set up this? You click on edit settings, and then you take your bucket ARN, and then you paste here, and then you put your AWS location, and then you save. That is what you must do. Okay, that is what you must do before you use Athena. I have already done this. Take your S3 your ARN of your S3 bucket, you paste here, right? Or you just search for your S3 bucket here. Just click here, you will search for your S3 bucket, you click on your S3 bucket, and that's all. Not an ARN, please, it is your S3 bucket. Just click it and you paste here. You are in the same AWS account, so you can just press save, and that will be all. Okay, so I have already done it here. That is why it does not ask me for anything. So all I need to do now is I need to create a table. And how do I create that table? I'm going to create a table in Athena using a particular code. What is that code? I've already prepared a code for you to create a table. But now the first thing is I'll have to go try to change my edit or my the link, because my first link was with this bucket and the bucket is no more there. So I have to press settings, and then I go to manage, and then I see that very space. You see that they are telling me that unable to verify this because the bucket is no more there. So I'm going to S3 now. I'm choosing my normal S3 bucket, the one that I've just created. Click OK. I'm in the same bucket ID and everything. I'm in the same account, no issues. I save. Now I am okay to go. I'm okay to run I'm able to run my queries. So the first query I have to run here is, after linking my bucket to my Athena, you saw that I have linked my bucket to my Athena. Now the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to run a query, and that query is going to create me a table. Okay, that query is going to create me a table. Now here, how many tables do I have here already? I created one table. So let me delete this table. Okay, Table deleted. So this is the command I should have run in order to delete that table. So because they want you to do everything using queries, okay? So I've prepared the query language for you here. In order to create a table, you have to use this query language. You just need to copy all this. The language, the code says create external table if not exist, called VPC flow logs, right? Create external table if not exist, called VPC flow logs, right? Now this name you can change it, it is your problem, but I'm leaving the name there. They are giving you the version in it. I copied this from AWS. I did not write it myself. The AWS file gave me this. Copied all this from AWS, and then what I'm supposed to change now is my location. This location like this, this location like this needs to be changed. This code here like this, from here right up to here, it needs to be changed. Question is, where should I see how to change the code? That's the only thing that needs to be adapted for this code to work for you. This line here needs to be changed. Question is, where do I see this code here? This is where you see the code. Go to your S3 bucket, please. Go to your S3. And click on your S3 bucket, particular bucket. Now when you click on your S3 bucket, you click on your logs, VPC flow logs. Now you end here where you see your region. Where you see your region, you end. Look at where we started. We started from our bucket, right? We clicked on our AWS logs. We are looking at this place where we'll see our region pops up. We end there. We click inside. We have not yet seen our region. We click inside. We have not yet seen our region. We click inside. Our region has popped up. Okay, here is our region now that has popped up. We can copy now the address. You copy now this address from here, and then you come here. If I paste the address here, you will see something. You see, this is the address. This is the same, almost the same address like the one above. Okay, so I can now copy this address from here like this, copy, and I replace it inside here like this, and I paste. So I have pasted now the new address there. This address is no more nested. I've pasted now the new address there, so this code now can work for me. Okay, the code is going to create me tables. The code can work for me now. So I come to Athena, I paste. When I paste the code, what happens? I run. Look here, take a look here. The code has finished. Tell me that one table has been created. One table has been created here like this. Okay, that means my code was successfully executed. After I've executed my code, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to alter the table. When you execute your code, the next thing you do is you alter the table. And how do you alter the table? Here is the code for you to alter the table, right? And do you have anything that you are going to modify in this code? Is there anything to modify in this code? Yes, of course, there is something to modify in this code. The first thing is you are going to modify the date. Today is the 29th, so I'm putting 29th of April 2024. Okay, and here also now it is dangerous for me to just modify the date here. So instead of modifying the date here, I am going to go to my S3 bucket and copy this code where I end with the date. Okay, so like here, when we were here, we ended at the region. Okay, at the region we ended and we copied. Now we keep going in. This is the year, we click, we have the year. This is the month, we click, we have the month. And then this is the day, we click, we have the day. Now we can copy, we have the day, the date is there, we can copy it now. Okay, we'll copy it now. We can come here and look at what I'm having here. Now it is almost similar here, everything is almost similar, but you discover that there are things that will not be the same with your own, because this one is my account and there are several things that would be different from you. So I can copy now this address here like this, copy, and then I paste here. From here to S3, I paste. Right now this one, I copy now the whole, just this one like this. This is my code to alter the table, rearrange the table. I clear the code to create a table. Then I come now to paste the code to alter the table. I run. The code has executed successfully. I've altered the table. Okay, I've altered the table. Now it is time now to start searching, making queries to my data. Okay, I have to start searching and making queries to my data. So what should I do? Let me select all the accepted logs into my VPC. I want to know all the accepted logs into my VPC. I prepared that code for you. The code to know all the accepted logs into your VPC. Here is the code. Select day of week, date as, day, date, interface ID, scalar, and then all here you can put accept. Right, put accept here. And then you copy all this, then you come here, you paste, and then you run. When you run, you go down, you see it has run and it has given you all the calls that were accepted. Okay, has given you all the call. Now you are querying your data, but your data is directly in an S3 bucket and not in a database. Your data is on an S3 bucket, but you are capable of querying the data directly through Athena. Okay, I can still decide, and instead of putting accept, I clear, I put reject, just like what I did. I put reject. See, limit is 100 lines. I just limit it to 100 lines. Okay, copy, and I paste. And I execute. Now they are showing me now all the various calls that were rejected. You see this on this date, this interface made a call, and this address, and the call was rejected. Okay, these are various resources that are making calls to my VPC, and my VPC is rejecting all of them. Okay, my VPC is rejecting all of them. So this is what we have about Athena, guys. So you can be able now to query your data. After you must have learned Athena, the next thing that you should learn in order to master your knowledge in Athena is query language. So you should learn how to write most of these SQL queries, or all of them are already available in the internet. If you want a query to do a particular thing, just type. Now you need an SQL query to do this. The internet will give you, copy and you paste there, you execute, it will give you your results. Today, you don't need to be cramming things up and down. You just need to master the format in which things are being done, and then you can do anything. Okay, so that is our that concludes our topic for today and concludes VPC for us. So we are going to still see some topics that are directly linking to VPC, but as VPC is concerned, this concludes VPC for us. It was a gigantic topic, and truly it gets finished today, and I'm very happy and satisfied. I hope you too are. As I always say, the best way is practice it. When you practice it, you see more details and you get where to ask so many questions. And when you ask questions and you are clarified, you master it and you never forget. Okay, guys, thank you very much, and see you in our next video, where we are going to continue with, I think, VPN. I'm going to look at VPN, and then we're going to look at database cloud route 53, and we see how we gradually finish our lessons. See you in the next video. Bye bye.